Push that back just a little bit. I want to talk to this guy. I've been wanting to talk to this guy for quite a while. David Helman from DallasCowboys.com covers the Cowboys. And in this state, of course, obviously a lot of Cowboy fans, but a lot of Dak fans as well. So just we wanted to get his thoughts. First off question, though, are you ready for your close-up on Hard Knocks?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how all that works out. It's kind of anticlimactic, to be honest with you, because obviously their whole crew's here. They're filming everything, but the first episode's not for another 2 or 3 weeks, so we're going to have to wait to see just what they get. But, yeah, I'll have an eye out for myself for sure.
Well, everybody's going to be looking at that, not only to see you, but to see Dak Prescott, obviously coming back from that huge injury. Just the early returns on how he looks fully. Is he ready to go? What do you expect to see from him in the coming weeks?
Oh, I mean, it's funny, and rightfully so. I mean, we all saw that injury. We saw how gnarly it was, and how devastating it was for him. And it's only natural to think that that's going to take some time. But man, he's blown, I think, every expectation out of the water for how quickly he can be 100%. Because he was more or less 100% ready to go in the spring, and that's only carried over to the summer. They haven't put pads on yet. Obviously, no preseason games yet. But I mean, he doesn't look limited even in the slightest. You look at him, and it does. I mean, he doesn't wear a brace on that ankle. He doesn't look like he's limping or ginger. He doesn't take days off. He doesn't take reps off. He looks ready to go. It's really impressive.
Why do you think that Dak, in this state, I understand why Dak doesn't get a ton of respect from some folks, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who don't like Dak from his college days. But nationally, he seems to take more heat than any other quarterback. Is that just a function of him being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys? Why does Dak Prescott get so little respect nationally?
Yeah, two things at work. I was actually just talking about this with somebody at lunch. I mean, he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. So, yeah, I mean, half of the people in Mississippi probably dislike him because they're Ole Miss fans. Well, just, multiply that on a national scale. If you don't love the Dallas Cowboys, you hate them. Nobody has a lukewarm opinion about the Dallas Cowboys. So if you don't love Dak Prescott, you probably hate him because of who he plays for. And on top of that, he's one of just a few guys that have really reached the top level of quarterbacking as a non-first round pick. I mean, the vast majority of the star quarterbacks in this league were taken in the first 20 or 30 picks, and it's really Tom Brady, Dak, and Russell Wilson that have managed to succeed despite that. And so I think a lot of people write him off because of where he was drafted, and you just naturally assume that a guy taken 135th overall isn't as talented as somebody taken top 10. I think it's a mental thing. So those two factors, I think, combine to kind of give Dak a lot more doubters than I think he probably deserves.
That's an interesting thought. I never really thought about it from the draft perspective, but I agree with you. We're talking to David Helman of DallasCowboys.com. When you look at what the Cowboys were in Dak's rookie year, when they won the NFC East and were the number 1 overall seed, to where they are now, have the Cowboys done enough coming into this season to say, okay, yeah, we have Dak and that's great, but is this a playoff team around Dak?
I think so, but some of that is the function of the division that they play in. I mean, we saw last year the NFC East it's not a very strong division, at least not compared to a lot of the other ones in the NFC. The Washington won it at 7-9 last year. The Cowboys were in it up until the final week of the season, despite losing Dak in Week 5. It's just not a very strong division. So I think this is a team capable of winning the division and making the playoffs, but and obviously, you can never completely predict a season in July with all the twists and turns. But, this was a team with a really atrocious defense in last season. They did a lot of work in the draft to try to fix that, but I think it's fair to say probably not enough. And then obviously there's a health component. Can Dak stay healthy? Can his offensive line stay healthy? They couldn't last year. On top of losing Dak, they played the vast majority of the season without a lot of their star offensive linemen. So I think this is a playoff caliber team. I'm not sure if they're as good as like a Tampa Bay or a Green Bay. I think they're probably another tier below that. But I certainly think, the expectation is this team should be good enough to get into the playoffs.
When you look at the rest of the division in the NFC East, like you said, a year ago, not the best division in pro football by a long shot. Who is the other team to watch? Is it still Washington? Is Philadelphia coming back? Are the Giants starting to rebound? Who are you keeping an eye on there?
I think, the Giants probably deserve a mention, but the expectation is that this will be a dogfight between Dallas and Washington. And it's fun. It's fun because these are two completely differently structured teams. Dallas has the high-flying offense with the $40 million quarterback and the running, the $100 million running back in Ezekiel Elliott. They got receivers all over the place. And Washington, they definitely have some talent on offense. Terry McLaurin is a great young receiver. Antonio Gibson broke out as a very solid running back last year. But, the real talent on that roster is on their defense, whether it's Chase Young. Obviously, y'all are familiar with Montez Sweat as well. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, who just signed a big deal today as well. Yeah. So it's going to be really fun when those two teams go together because it should be one of the best offenses in the league against one of the stingiest defenses in the league.
You mentioned Zeke Elliott. There's been so much talk about Dak, and this is a prove-it year for Dak, and he's got to do well. Isn't this sort of a prove-it year for Zeke Elliott? Big contract at a position where you don't normally get those kind of dollar figures, and since his rookie year hasn't had the same kind of impact. What does Zeke Elliott have to do this year?
Absolutely. Dak's always going to get the headlines because he's the quarterback, but I don't think it's a stretch to say this could be a real make it or break it season for Zeke, because the way that his deal is structured, he got a 6-year extension. The Cowboys can get out of it if they need to after, not this coming season, but after the 2022 season. And, he's only 26 years old. He just turned 26. But he's got a lot of mileage on him, because of how heavily the Cowboys have used him. And, he had a disappointing season last year. He had fumbling problems. He lacked explosiveness. It's fair to point out that, half of the good players on his offense were injured, so he didn't have a ton of help. But if you make $15 million a year, there's an expectation that you can make it happen without all that. So it's going to be interesting to see how he rebounds. I think that he will, but, if the Cowboys have a better run of health this year and Zeke still doesn't look like the old guy that we got familiar with, I think the Cowboys probably have to start having some hard conversations about what his future looks like.
I guess we need to get your take on the biggest story in college football, too. People who don't know you, that I know that you're an LSU alum and a passionate one at that. Texas and Oklahoma headed over this way. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess it is what it is. I'm not super excited about it. I guess I'm kind of a traditionalist. We've all been in the SEC together for like 80 years at this point. You kind of get used to the old rivalries, and I like playing Alabama first weekend in November. Mississippi State's usually like a September or October game. Ole Miss on Halloween is an LSU tradition, and it's kind of a bummer to think that some of that stuff is probably going to change. But at the same time, two of the biggest brands in college football joining the fray. That'll be a lot of fun. And selfishly, I live in Dallas, so it should be easy for me to get to Norman and Austin for games. So that's fun. But, it's kind of weird. I don't know 100% how I feel about it.
Yeah, you're not alone in that, I promise. That there's just so much different stuff happening in college football. It never changes, but it never stays the same either. Thanks so much for joining me today. Really great stuff. Appreciate it. David Helman from DallasCowboys.com on the Farm Bureau phone line. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime, man. Appreciate it.
That's good stuff. Cowboys, I tell you, man, I think that's a good football team. I think they're going to be a threat in the NFC East, and I think they could surprise some teams when we get to the playoffs because, it's not going to come as any surprise to anybody listening, Bob. I'm a believer in Dak Prescott. I tend to buy into that guy and what he does, and I think for sure that's going to be a team that I think they're going to sneak up on somebody this year. I won't be surprised to see them make a little – I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. I don't think they're there just yet. But if you told me they could make the second round and maybe knock off a higher seed and, give somebody like a Tampa Bay or a Green Bay, who I think, as David was saying, those are really the class of the NFL, or the NFC anyway, I won't be totally surprised by that.
Yeah, and with that division, man, come on. You know,
It is.